Hi, I'm Kyle Young. I'm a Principal PM Manager responsible for Dynamics 365 for Field Service. Thank you for joining us today to learn what's new in this release. So our goal today is to make you aware of new features. We'll show some of those and also talk about some others. The first area we'll dig into is Field Service on the new Unified Interface Framework, including a new schedule board view that's quite interesting, and we'll have some fun with 3D content. Let's jump into the demo and take a look at these areas. This is the Field Service solution on the new Unified Interface. All of Field Service and all of the setting capabilities will be moved to Unified Interface in this release. First up is the navigation. It's over here on the left. You can see similar menu items that we had in previous releases. These are all based on app modules, and so I can have multiple app modules that provide a very flexible and a very targeted experience. We ship a Field Service app module out of the box, but that can be extended and modified. Also, within the Field Service capability, it's easy to get to related information. So for example, if I wanted to look at Field Service settings, I could go here, and you have all the Field Service settings available. Also, since resource scheduling is a key part of Field Service, it's easy to go to resource scheduling as well. So here are the resource scheduling menu items. We'll go back to Field Service. One of the advantages of Unified Interface is that it's based on responsive design principles, meaning that it will adjust based on form factor. So this is a browser view, but I can easily go to a smaller view that you might see on a phone or a tablet. And you'll notice as I go to that view, the UX changes to be ideal and optimized for the view that I'm using based on the device size. Here we'll go back to the regular size view, and you see that it adapts back to a web view. Let's take a look at work order in detail. This is the business process flow, which has been optimized for visual appeal and clarity of use. And below this, there is a new mechanism for navigating throughout the form. So I can go to different sections of the form simply by navigating across these tabs. Here I can take a look at service tasks, and I have also other capabilities like being able to select a service task and simply mark it as complete. These are basically easily done actions that can be enabled in Unified Interface. Next we'll take a look at the schedule board. The schedule board looks quite familiar from previous releases, but there is some new capability. This is the traditional view that allows manual scheduling or schedule assistant that were all available previously. But I want to go to a different view. The map functionality is still here. But here's the new view, which is the list view. And in the list view, the same information is presented, but that information now is in textual form. And so for someone who uses a screen reader or prefers this type of format, that view is now available. It's all the same information and all the same functions and actions, but simply in a different form. Another capability that was added in this release was the ability to associate 3D content with customer assets. So here you can see in our menu we have customer asset as one of our key entities, and that represents equipment or devices. And it's very common that a technician needs additional assistance to be able to complete a repair or a service on a given device. And so now there's the ability to associate 3D content to that asset. I'll manipulate this 3D image here a little bit, and you can see that I can now see how that image would, how that device actually works and how it could come apart and go back together, the key pieces of that, and also look at different views of it, what it might look like, and visualize it from a different view. You can also see while I'm looking at it that's playing an animation that shows the steps for a service or repair. This capability is available on Unified Interface as I'm showing here. It's also available on the mobile client. And so this is another nice feature that comes with this release. Next, we'll dive into Resource Scheduling Optimization, or RSO. And we'll take a look at some of the new capabilities for RSO. including extensible scope, running as simulation, and also enforcing skill levels. Let's take a look at what this looks like as we go into the product with this following demo. We'll start with the schedule board and look at manually scheduled to begin with. So these resources on the top part of the schedule board are actually manually scheduled. And scheduling is a function of, first of all, resource requirements, which indicate, based on the work order, what work is needed, in what time frame, in what location, and what skills. The set of resources and their skill sets and their availability and their locations. And then bookings are the intersection of those requirements and resources, and those show up here on the schedule board as a completed booking. So the top half of the schedule board I've scheduled manually, but the resources on the bottom half of the board I've actually set to be scheduled through Resource Scheduling Optimization, or RSO. And so you can see that these are nicely scheduled with nice compact travel times. And that's a capability that has been available, but we've added some new capability to make this much more flexible. So if I go to the RSO administration area, I'm going to look at one of the schedules that I have set up. And the area that I want to focus on as I look at this schedule is the scope. So let's take a look at what this scope looks like. And for those familiar with RSO, you'll see that there are some new capabilities available. And the capability that I want to focus on is having extensible scope capability. So you'll notice here that the resource view, the requirement view, and also the booking view are all based on views. And so any view that you could build across these entities in Dynamics 365 can be used to represent the input to RSO. And so RSO will use whatever you set in that view as its input. So, for example, on the resource requirement view, I have a view here called WA5 Day 2. So if I go to take a look at resource requirements, I can see I may have a default view I've used for other reasons, but if I look here at the bottom, you'll see that this view is actually existing here. I'll look at that view, and that view enters a set of resource requirements that RSO will consider for that specific schedule. Now these are just typical views, so if I take a look, I can actually see, using the query builder, the criteria that I've used to create that view. And so using a non-developer experience, I can create a view that represents a broad set of criteria. In this case, it's fairly simple, but it can actually be more complicated if need be, based on the business logic. And so that view is being used. And similarly, there are other views for resources and requirements and bookings. And so I have run each of those, and I will then be able to take a look at the results. And so when I ran RSO based on that criteria, I will be able to see those results. So I can actually see which bookings were created, which resources were considered, and so forth, and actually get some graphics that indicate how well that did related to the goals of RSO. So that's a nice extensibility capability to be able to use variable views as the input for RSO. Now, another way that that can manifest itself is that it could also manifest itself for exceptions. So let's just say that I've got a different schedule that I've set up here. And in this case, when I look at the view, I actually am going to use a different view for the resource. And in this case, I've got a view of the resource which is actually much more limited and has identified those technicians that need to be re-optimized. So if I go to take a look at this view that I've used, I've got a new view here that has re-optimized. And so I can use business criteria to determine if I have resources that need to be re-optimized, and if so, I can feed those in as the view of the resources for RSO to consider. So in this case, it's single resource, and for some reason, it could be any variety of business reasons, that resource has been set for re-optimized, and so that view will pick up that resource when it feeds it into RSO. So the next feature is the ability to run RSO as a simulation. So again, if we think about schedule board, we have a set of resource requirements, resources, and bookings. But here when we go to look at our RSO schedule, there's an option to actually run this as a simulation. And when that runs as a simulation, it doesn't create permanent bookings, but it will show what those bookings would look like based on giving RSO different scope or different goals. And so in this case, we just ran a simulation. We can take a look at what the simulation results are. And so similar to a normal run, it will have the statistics and show the bookings and the resources that were involved. But now if we open up the schedule board for the simulated run, there's a schedule board that's actually associated with this run. We open up that schedule board. We then will actually now see not only the original run of RSO, which has certain bookings to it, but also after we have changed either scope or rules, we also see these simulated bookings. And so we can actually do a visual compare based on the original RSO run and the alternative RSO run. And so while we're configuring RSO or looking at different options for RSO, simulation is going to be a powerful tool to be able to determine if we have the right scope and goal set for our various schedules. And then the last capability that we wanted to cover has to do with the constraints. So currently there's the capability of having a constraint, for example, that meets required characteristics, and that represents, for example, skills. And so the skill required for the skill required for the requirement and the associated skill that is possessed by the given resource. So skill matching already exists, but now there's the ability to actually specify a level of matching so that the level of skill is based on the requirement matches the level of skill for the resource. And that's the last feature that we wanted to show on Resource Scheduling Optimization, or RSO. Next, we'll take a look at Connected Field Service, or IoT. We'll look first of all at syncing with the new IoT Hub capability for device twins. Then we'll look at the new features for both categories and commands and how those can be used to help manage devices. We'll go now into a demo to show you some of these in action. Here you see Connected Field Service, and this is also on the new unified interface. Here's a dashboard that shows some of the same information you've seen in the past, but now it's in the updated UI format. Here we see a bunch of alerts that have come in, and if we take a look at one of those alerts, we can see the details of that alert. And this is the functionality that existed previously. And these alerts, for example, are coming, in this case, from a simulator. And that simulator is sending various temperature readings in for this device that I've created. So as those readings come in, we're able to see the alert and see the details. And as in the past, we've demonstrated the ability to use workflow or take other actions based on those alerts. So some of the new capability we've added is the ability to manage categories and commands. So you notice a new entity called Device Categories. And so if I look at this entity, I have a category for the class, in this case, of 3D printers that I support. And as I look at this category, I can specify different commands. So I can specify and have defined a reset printer command, and that command will actually go back to IoT Hub and back to that device, and will execute whatever I told it to do as I set up the command. We have device properties, and so these properties can actually specify the desired settings for a device. And as we look at these properties, what we will then see is the ability to synchronize between the device that's actually defined in CFS with the IoT Hub device twin. That's a new capability on the IoT side that actually stores tags, desired and reported properties around that device. And we'll take a little more look into that. It also supports device tags for this category of devices. For example, it might be interesting to have metadata like the building where this 3D printer actually sits. So if I go back, I'll take a look into an actual device. And so I've got a device here called Engineering 3D Printer that I have defined based on this category. And based on the attributes of the category, I have different device settings. For example, I have the desired temperature, and that was based on the definition of the category. And also I have a device tag, in this case the building, and so you can see that I've actually set the building for this device. And so what this allows is having the management capability of a single device based on the category that will drive both commands and properties and tags. From here, I'm going to go to the Azure IoT side of things. So when I go to Azure IoT, I'm going to go to the IoT Hub. So this is the IoT Hub that's associated with this CFS instance, and you can see key information in the IoT Hub, like the number of messages and devices and so forth. But I want to go to the IoT devices, and when I do that, I'll see that I actually have a device defined here. This is my 3D printer that I showed you on the CFS side. If I took a look at that printer, I'll be able to see that I now have this digital twin capability. And so with that digital twin capability, we now have synchronization between tags and properties that are on CFS, and those are synchronized with the properties that are on the device twin. So here if we take a look at the device twin, for example, we can see that tag that was defined in CFS for building, and you can see that I've populated that with a value. Now if I were to make a change here, this would synchronize back to the attributes that are stored in Connected Field Service. And so that's a two-way sync. Also on the properties, you can see that that temperature that I set in CFS is now set here as a desired setting, or that desired temperature for this device. Again, if I modified it here, then that information would be synchronized back to Connected Field Service. And the other capability is the ability to capture recorded properties that the device has. So it might be its current state or how it connects to the Wi-Fi or something like that. And those properties are populated on the device twin, and those can also then be synchronized back to Connected Field Service, and so those properties would come back, and then from there I could actually take action on that in Connected Field Service. And so you can see that we've now added a great capability to be able to synchronize device twin properties, as well as having the ability to manage commands and categories in Connected Field Service. And the last area we want to cover is integration with Dynamics 365 for finance and operations. This is a key capability for those customers who are running both field service and finance and operations. The integration is based on Common Data Service, and the integration template outlines the master data integration as well as transactional integration. So for example, on the master data side, account and products, it also then integrates for transactionally with work orders and invoices. And these are key integrations for customers who are running both of these solutions. Now, it's also a pattern that's shipped as a template that can be used for other ERP integration. And so you could pick up the template and actually modify it for connections with other ERP integration through the Common Data Service capability. So those are the items we wanted to cover today that are the features that are new in this release. This slide gives you a quick summary if you want to refer to it. We look forward to you taking advantage of these new features in your implementation. With that, I just want to say thank you for joining us, and thank you for learning more about field service.